What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So I've been looking through a lot of the comments, been engaging in a lot of conversations surrounding Gotham Knights here on the channel and even in other platforms and forums. And it's very interesting to still see that there is a huge divide within the community. There are folk who are, in a sense, still warming up to the idea of the game. And there are also some who have made their decisions so far and are not necessarily impressed. Now, here's the beauty of it. A lot of the trolling and a lot of the, excessive negativity that doesn't warrant anything has largely faded away. So right now we're dealing with some serious folk who are actually following the game and have seen everything from the start and are making their decisions based on that. And their decisions are a no. We don't necessarily want to get this game so far. It is that audience that I respect so far and so much, because most have been very level-headed about their criticisms on the game. You see, that's one thing about the internet. You're going to find criticisms everywhere, but if you pay very close attention, you're going to find the ones that have very good constructive setups and are in many cases valid. And even for those of us who have finally come around, we've basically made peace with the fact that we're going to be getting this game, not because it's supposed to be some really impressive game. I think sometimes that is misunderstood, because most of you've played Spider-Man. Marvel Spider-Man is a very impressive game, regardless of what you think about the story, regardless of what you think about the studio or how much investment they had. By the way, they had a lot of investment. It is obvious that the game is very, very impressive from a gameplay perspective. Most of you have also played the Arkham games, and you also know that that is a very impressive game itself. And this is, in my opinion, what I think a lot of us, are kind of missing, in the sense of understanding where the people who want to play this game are. We're playing Gotham Knights for another reason that's not just, oh, we're impressed. How can you top Rocksteady's Batman Arkham series? You actually can't. You really have to go ahead and make a video game that is maybe like their game in a sense, or at least build off of the basis of their game. But Rocksteady is also an established studio that has over a decade in the development of video games, and not just video games, but their own video games. And they are pretty much the pride and joy of any publisher that has them underneath their wings. Now, in the case of Warner Brothers Games Montreal, Warner Brothers Games Montreal is still establishing itself. One of my audience members compared Gotham Knights to the Arkham Asylum of Warner Brothers Games Montreal, their first attempt at putting a video game together. Now, it was awkward and very interesting to see them actually make some kind of a switch away from the Arkham series. But once I started to look and say, okay, they seem to want to go a creative direction that is not Arkham, that's identical to themselves, that is their own identity, then I said to myself, I guess I can now see a position where I can judge this game from the gameplay perspective as their own original work and original creation. This is a very different paradigm, a different perspective, and a different place than I was as of 2 years ago when we first saw this game. And my position has shifted, not necessarily only because of that, but because I also have been playing around with game development and I understand how much it is. So many of you may not know, I started learning game development in 2020. I've been on that particular track for a very long time to understand the intricacies. And I have a very good friend of mine that we actually started development together. In fact, he's now developing his own game prototype. And even he, yesterday and we were talking finally after so many months, because he's been working very hard. He and we concluded one thing, that a completed game is a successful game. Because in today's day and age, where they cancel games all over the place, where games come out busted and broken, we go back and we look at games that we kind of tarnished or trashed on, and we say, the effort was quite worth it. In fact, one experience he and I had was Godfall. We both jumped in on Godfall. We bought it on the Epic Games Store. We played it for a little bit, and since then we deleted the game. We were so upset. But now we look back at that game and we say to ourselves, man, it's interesting that we looked at that game from a whole different perspective. And once we started doing video game development together, it was an entirely, different framework that we spent. Now, this is something that I understand that not everybody is going to have at the back of their minds. Not everyone's going to be, looking at video games like that, because he and I are also YouTubers. So when we talk about video games, we get to look at perspectives of others around the corner and see, okay, there are varying opinions left and right. Now, the biggest concern nonetheless, though, is for some who are still wondering that the developers might be still hiding something about this game. They still have this skepticism that there is something hidden about this game that they can't seem to put a finger on. In fact, just yesterday, I read a comment and somebody said, it'd be nice if they would actually show us how side missions actually work in this game. I want to see a side mission. I'd like to see something like that. And, that was quite interesting to me, because I thought to myself, I thought they already showed us a side mission in 2020 when they showed us the Batgirl mission with Mr. Freeze. And that was quite peculiar to me, because I remember that being clearly one of the better ways of actually presenting the game, where Batgirl actually approaches a specific location and she has to deal with, goons outside of this plaza, and makes her way into that place and then meets Mr. Freeze. In fact, they even started the mission from somewhere. I don't know where they would have started it from. Maybe it was just a belfry, type indication in a sense. So, Barbara to Belfry, this is what's going on. I see a weather anomaly, blah, blah, blah. It has the whole narrative. She's riding on a bike. We got to see that. Then Robin jumps in. They grapple up. They go in there. They do stealth. They fight a bunch of bad guys. And eventually they make their way up to the big bad boss, Mr. Freeze. At this point, I saw this mission and I said to myself, when the game first came out, this is giving me Assassin's Creed vibes. That was my very first assessment of this game. Some of you were here and you said to me, are you crazy? Why would you use Assassin's Creed as your own, measurement, or as the scale to measure this game? And I said it came from a perspective where I saw the combat and the way the enemies had the emblems on their head and their health bars. And it just resonated Assassin's Creed to me, having played more recently at that time Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And so if you look at the way the numbers were flying and all that, I thought to myself, this is an Assassin's Creed type setup where, yes, you're in the Bat family, but you're playing a whole full-blown RPG game. Now, for many, this probably did not seem to them that this was a real deal. I remember IGN in their open world showcase confirming that this side mission was actually a thing. So if anyone is wondering what a side mission would look like, here it is. Another thing, too, is with this skepticism, some have even said it seems like they're still hiding something from the audience. And this game doesn't seem to be exactly what it is that it's being revealed to be. And in that sense, I ask, what more could they be hiding other than the story and some aspects of progression that we don't necessarily know about? In fact, if you're not paying attention, this game is not going to be, as impressive as some other games that you've played. But there is something that this game is going to have that, or at least is what the developers seem to want the game to have, and that's replayability. Hence, the 4 characters, leveling them up or sharing your XP and your ability points across the different characters so that you can progress further, and then leaving the game as a co-op game, which does change up everything, because you and your friend, you can do, activities together. You can farm XP together. Imagine if your buddy wanted to level up, say, their Red Hood character after the 3rd playthrough. You can hop in with them with your really OP character, and you guys can just destroy enemies. So that aspect of the game really does work and makes it distinct. Even though Spider-Man may be a more impressive single-player game, Spider-Man did not have that loop, according to many people who've played the game, that once you beat Spider-Man, it felt like it was a one and done. A lot of the activities did not necessarily feel like, you were really doing much. The Arkham games at least gave you the Riddler trophies and cleaning out the city with the most wanted setup. That was decent. I thought that was, in Arkham Knight anyways, I thought that was actually quite commendable of them. But just recently, the developers went ahead and actually showcased some of the skills. And I thought, man, that's actually a more transparent way to actually go in, because I think there is one thing about this game, and it usually gets its comparisons to Marvel's Avengers. And I think it's somewhat fair. I'm not saying that people are doing it to just troll the game, because some people said they liked Avengers, right? I mean, they enjoyed the game, and they thought, it was something that was probably, it fell short of what the potential could have been. So in looking at the skill tree just recently, a lot of people have said, man, this just feels more like Avengers to me. I don't necessarily see how I can actually, invest in the game because of this. And I say that's actually wonderful. So now that you've seen the skill tree, it makes sense for you not to even bother with spending your money on the game. And now everybody else who saw the skill tree and said, yeah, I'm okay with this, can now make a very clear distinction and say, this is exactly what it is I'm spending my money on. This skill tree, however long it's going to take me to, max out, or however short it's going to take me to max out, I know exactly what it is I'm spending my money on. And some have disagreed. Well, Batgirl, can you imagine that, she can't fly until she unlocks the ability in the knighthood tree? Yep, I see that as some contention that some might have. And I say to that, well, that's actually interesting, because in the beginning of the game, somewhere, somehow, she may not necessarily need it, or maybe the way the game is the progression actually works. They might introduce you to the skill tree at a short point of progression and then introduce you to the knighthood tree and use their traversal abilities to be the introduction, and then encourage you to go ahead and actually unlock the other aspects of that knighthood tree by, doing the activities and the challenges. It does seem like that to me. I don't think they're going to withhold their heroic traversals away from you for a huge portion of the game. I mean, that's my thinking anyways. Who knows? That would be a big bad design decision if they went ahead and did that. But by and large, I think if there's anything you want to know about Gotham Knights, I think at this point, all you have to do is ask, or at least go out there and search out whatever it is that you're looking for. So far, so good. This game has showcased everything within its framework, within its game. All of these cutscenes and, trailers and all that, they are all in-engine done. And Unreal Engine is the engine that has a lot of knowledge base around. And if most gamers cannot necessarily comprehend this from that development perspective, the devs are still going to be fine, because in the eyes of other developers, they will look at this and say, these developers actually did everything by the book for their own game. Now, as to the direction that the game went in its creativity, that's where it's going to differ from some gamers. Some gamers already don't like the direction of the game. And I think that's a very good thing, that now you don't have to worry about making the choice between buying 2 games or 3 games during the holiday. You can go ahead and buy other games like God of War. One of my audience members was very frank with me, and they said, man, I could not necessarily come on board right now with Gotham Knights, so I went ahead and pre-ordered God of War. And that's fine. That's the safe bet. They already made one game, and they're going to make the second game that's going to basically be the same game that you played with a few advancements, progression of the story, and you're going to be getting pretty much a safe game, and that's what God of War is going to be. Gotham Knights, on the other hand, is a risk. If you buy Gotham Knights, you put yourself in a position where you don't necessarily know how it's going to turn out, but you have just enough information to have actually made the first decision in the very first place. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I really want to continue this conversation, especially with those that have, their concerns about the game, because this is very informative to me and informative to others in the community, so that whenever the game comes out, if at any rate those who were actually, apprehensive about the game were correct, it would make sense for us to say, yes, this is why they saw these things, and this is exactly what it is that they were, pointing towards, that some of us probably were not able to catch. And then for those of us who played the game at the time that it comes out, and we see that our assessment for the game was actually, maybe solid, we'll say, okay, well, I guess our instincts were right as well, and we'll find areas that we probably missed a few things. Potentially, the game is better than we think, or potentially the game is not as good as we think. No one is drawing judgments to say that this game is the most awesome game in the entire world. So, again, I'll talk to you guys in another video. I really appreciate your time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon. Peace out.